Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Let's get really quickly to some of the big games of the weekend. I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking them all down, but let me just say this. First of all, most interesting game in the noon window is actually in the Pac-12. Did you guys see this? See, here's the thing. The Pac-12 just was off our radar for so long that they just do crazy stuff and nobody even knows it's happening except this Saturday. How about this? Arizona State at USC, two best teams in the Pac-12 South on paper are playing. That's the headline. Here's the story behind the story, though. The real headline is they're kicking off at noon Eastern, which I know it's daylight savings. We're all a little confused about time. That's 9 a.m. Pacific. Larry Scott, the commissioner of the Pac-12, in his attempt to just piss off everybody in Pac-12 country, has convinced himself that the reason his league does not get respect is because of the fact that they play games too late at night. So he has decided, this is his big infinite piece of wisdom, that he is going to start playing games at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, because more fans are in front of the TV at that time. First of all, it's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Because I'll say this. You're never going to compete with Ohio State and Michigan and two SEC games and four Big Ten games and Oklahoma in the noon window. The reason nobody's watching your games is because your teams stink. Get Oregon good, get USC good, make them relevant, and people will watch them regardless of when or where they play. Nobody watches because your teams stink. And so because of it, I crack up when I see this, and I would also say that there's no doubt that the best exposure the Pac-12 has is actually in that 10:30 window when there's nothing else on. But anyway, that is the headline here. USC kicking off against ASU, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Forget Pac-12 after dark. This is Pac-12 before dawn. And I will say it is a fascinating game to me for the reasons that I said a minute ago as it pertains to USC. USC on paper has the most talent in the entire Pac-12 and are certainly the most interesting story, right? Clay Helton is still on the hot seat. Clay Helton still has to win, but Clay Helton has the most dynamic offense in this league, has the most dynamic playmakers in this league, and is going up against an Arizona State defense that wasn't very good last year. Maybe Marvin Lewis is the guy that figures it out, but Arizona State finished 115th out of 130 teams in pass defense, so I know USC is coming in as a double-digit favorite. I know that historically they are a team that has struggled early in the season, but I think USC actually looks really good on Saturday. The other thing, too, I'll say really quickly about USC, I probably should have mentioned it a minute ago, they are the team in the Pac-12 that more than anybody fought to have a season. And I don't think you can undersell that, because if you look at what Ohio State is doing right now, right? Ohio State fought to have a season. Justin Fields, petition, players lining up, players boycotting, parents going to the Big Ten offices. And if you look at Ohio State, when they come out and play, they look like a team that is on a mission every time they step on the field, not just to beat you, but to prove we belong in the conversation, and we got this season, and we're not going to waste it. And so I think it's worth monitoring with USC, because I do think when I look at USC, I see a team that I believe, while historically they have not been great under Clay Helton, I get that. I think they fought so hard for this season that I think that they know what is on the line and what they are capable of doing, and I would not be surprised if they surprise some people and overachieve, potentially live up to their expectations for once, because again, I don't think you can put a price on a team fighting so hard, getting what they want, and now proving that it was the right thing. So that's something to monitor in that USC game. All right, let's transition to the next big game, which is obviously the Saturday 3:30 Eastern CBS sports game, SEC. That is, of course, Florida, Georgia. World's most outdoor cocktail party, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Don't really know how many cocktails are going to be served this year, but this is kind of a crazy game from this perspective, is that I don't know a single person that thinks Georgia's going to win this game, right? The line opened at Georgia -6, -5.5. As I record here on Wednesday night, it's down to -3. And I think by kickoff, it could be just about a pick 'em. And I will say, in defense of people who want to bet Georgia, I get it. Georgia's offense has been abysmal. I watched all of that Kentucky game last week because I had Georgia -15.5. And it's a credit to Kentucky's defense, but Georgia really couldn't do much. And then when they got in the red zone, Stetson Bennett threw a pick, and I think the verdict is out on Stetson Bennett. One, not only is he not an elite quarterback, two, if you put pressure on him, man, he makes bad decisions, balls get batted down. And so I understand the perspective of everyone taking Florida to win this game. I would say with Georgia, also another thing to consider, and this is a serious note, and I'm not trying to be funny, their best cornerback, Richard LeCount, got in a motorcycle accident over the weekend. He's okay. He's out of the hospital, but he's clearly not playing. And I think that's a factor, especially going up against this Florida offense that has been so dynamic. Here is where I'm getting tripped up, though, is that everybody loves Florida in this game, and I get it. You know, the fact of the matter is, though, Kirby Smart owns Dan Mullen. And I talked about it last year on this show. And I wanted to revisit it, and I looked up the stats just to make sure that my stats were correct. But here is a crazy stat about Dan Mullen and Kirby Smart. They have met 11 times as either head coaches or coordinators, or when Dan Mullen was a head coach at Mississippi State and Kirby Smart was a defensive coordinator at Alabama. 11 times they have met. Kirby Smart's team is 10-1 straight up in those meetings. The last time a Dan Mullen offense beat a Kirby Smart coach defense was the 2008 SEC Championship game when Tim Tebow was playing quarterback, Aaron Hernandez was at tight end, Lewis Murphy was at wide receiver, Percy Harvin was at wide receiver. It's been a long time. Now, I know what everyone would say is come on, dude, you can't really use that as a stat. Kirby Smart was at Alabama with Nick Saban for all those years. Dan Mullen was at Mississippi State. There was obviously a talent differential, and I do get that, right? But what I would also say is, since Dan Mullen got to Florida, Kirby Smart is 2-0, and it just feels like for whatever reason, Kirby Smart has Dan Mullen's number. I don't know what's going to happen in this game. I'm not picking a winner when I get to my picks later, but I will tell you this. I do think that Kirby Smart and Georgia are smart enough to know, much like what they did against Kentucky last week, the only way for them to win this game is to keep it low scoring. I expect them to run the ball as much as they possibly can, but it's going to be fascinating. All right, last kind of big game. Well, 1.5 big games. The real big game is obviously Clemson-Notre Dame, right? And I do think that the big story coming into this one that everybody is talking about, how does our guy DJ Uiagalelei, I can't remember. I did it so well on Monday's episode, can't do it now, but whatever. DJ Uiagalelei, how does he handle his first road start against Notre Dame, in South Bend, in the state of Indiana? And that is the big story that everyone's talking about. We know Trevor Lawrence is going to play. I don't think enough focus, though, is on Notre Dame, and let me explain why. I watched Notre Dame a bunch, bet them a few times, didn't bet them a few times, but I've watched them. And I think they're a good team, right? This is what I'm going to say next isn't the typical media, oh, Notre Dame's so overrated, they're terrible. No, I think they're a really good program, and I think Brian Kelly's about as good of a coach as they are ever going to have in my lifetime. I think he gets it. I think he gets how to recruit there. I think he gets how to be successful there. But if you look at what is going on at Notre Dame right now, this season, they have won games based on really good defense and the ability to run the ball. But more than how they've won games, it's who they've beaten. And as I was prepping for this game, I was thinking about, okay, well, who is Notre Dame beaten? And so I went ahead and looked at the ACC standings. This is a crazy fact about Notre Dame. There are currently 7 teams in the ACC with losing records. Notre Dame has played 6 of those games. So Notre Dame is 6-0, and all 6 wins have come against teams with losing records. Now, I would say Obviously, some of the fact that these teams have losing records is because they've played Notre Dame and because Notre Dame is really good. So again, I do not want to take that away from Notre Dame, but they have also kind of beaten a who's who of suck in the ACC. They have beaten Georgia Tech, which is 2-5. They have beaten Duke, which is 2-5. They have beaten Louisville, which is 2-5. They have beaten Pitt, which is 3-4. And so you could sit there and tell me like, oh, whatever. Like part of it is that they've played, the teams that they've played took a loss to them. Well, Florida State's lost 3 other times besides when they played Notre Dame. Louisville's lost 4 other times when they've played someone other than Notre Dame. Same with Duke. Same with Georgia Tech. And so my big thing with them is this. Everyone's so focused on DJ Uiagalelei that I'm sitting here saying, what about Notre Dame? What about Clemson? What about Clemson's defense, which was a little bit embarrassed last week against Boston College, coming into a big game with a chip on their shoulder, wanting to show the world, hey, what y'all saw last week against Boston College, that wasn't us, and we're going to prove it on Saturday in South Bend. And I do want to reemphasize something I said on Monday's show, is everyone was freaking out about that Clemson game, and I get it, 34-28 final score. But if you actually go back and think about that game, everything that Boston College could go right did go right for them in the first half of that game, okay? If you think back about all these weird catches, all these weird plays, there's that play on the goal line where Travis Etienne is going in for a touchdown. He coughs the ball up. It gets returned 97 yards the other way. You have the crazy play with Joe Tess's son where he gets Clemson to go off sides. Next play, Boston College scores a touchdown. If you kind of think about just those 2 plays in the context of that game, just think about it. If Travis Etienne gets the 3 yards rather than fumbling, all of a sudden, instead of a 28-13 lead that Boston College had at halftime, it's 21-20. And it feels completely different. Not to mention if Joe Tess's son doesn't, get Clemson to go off sides, they might not score a touchdown on that series. They might kick a field goal. So now all of a sudden we're talking about a 20-18 lead for Clemson instead of 21-20 or 28-13, excuse me. And then on top of that, what nobody's talking about, Clemson outscored Boston College 14-0 in the second half. Clemson's defense, once they got composed, pitched a shutout in the second half. And so I just don't think Notre Dame has seen a defense anything like what Boston College is about to deliver on Saturday, or what Clemson is going to deliver on Saturday. I think DJ Uiagalelei, I think he will be fine. I don't think he's going to be Trevor Lawrence because there's only one Trevor Lawrence, but I do think that he's going to be fine, and I do think that's probably the biggest game on the schedule. I mentioned there's another sort of big game, Oregon playing Stanford in that 7:30 Eastern time window. But I'll be honest, I just don't really see much to say about that game other than what I've already said, which is that Stanford is heading in the wrong direction and Oregon loses a ton. And so I just don't know what to expect in that game. All right, let's get to some gambling picks before we get out of here. And I will say, like, most of my picks I've actually already talked about in some form or fashion on this show so far. But let's get to the picks. I'll kind of explain why I have 8 picks this week. Every week, I swear, I'm like, dude, I'm going to find 2-3 games that I love and bet those. Instead, I got 8 that I like coming into this week. Let's start with our Pac-12 before dawn. USC, Arizona State, bacon, eggs, football, Coliseum. What's going to get you more fired up than seeing an empty Coliseum at 9 a.m.? Nothing. But I do like USC in this game for all the reasons that I'm all over the place, okay? Last couple days have been kind of crazy, okay? Let your boy live, okay? All right, let's get back on topic. USC minus 10.5, and I like USC, and I'll tell you why. I'm off the rails today. I like USC because of what I said. They fought for this season. This is their first chance. They get to show the world how much they wanted to play, and they have a real chip on their shoulder. I would also say, for all the flack that Clay Helton gets, I don't think he's as bad of a coach as everybody makes him out to be. Now, I understand that when you're at USC, the expectation is national championships, the expectation is college football playoffs, but the guy's been a head coach for 4 seasons, okay? He went to a Rose Bowl in one season, won 10 games, beat Penn State in the Rose Bowl. He won the Pac-12 in his second season. His third season is when he went 5-7 and everybody wanted him gone. But that was more because he had a team that was basically all freshmen. That was the year JT Daniels started at quarterback. And even in that season, they lost 3 out of their last 3 losses of the season. They had a lead at halftime and couldn't hold on. Goes 8-5 last year. And I don't think this guy's nearly as bad of a coach as people make him out to be. His problem is that he always gets behind the 8 ball early in the year, loses a game he shouldn't, and then all of a sudden they're playing catch-up the rest of the year. But I do like USC. Like I said, they fought for this season. I do think they come out. I think they win. I think they cover. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 38-14, 38-21, somewhere in that neighborhood. They win. I think the over will be a factor as well. Don't know if I trust Arizona State's quarterback, Jaden Daniels, so I'm going to stay away from the over. Do like USC minus 10.5. Staying in the noon window. I like Michigan. And I know I'm Mr. Flip-flop on Harbaugh. I know 2 weeks ago I said, why don't we ever give him credit for anything? And I crushed him on Monday after losing to Michigan State. But what I would say about Harbaugh is very simply this, is that I think we're focusing so much on him, and I want to look at the other side of the ball, the other side of things here, and that's with Indiana, okay? So Indiana is this feel-good story. For people who don't know, Michigan's playing at Indiana. Michigan is a 3-point favorite on the road at Indiana. I think everybody's like, well, Michigan sucks. Indiana's good. Let's take Michigan. Let's take Indiana. Here's my argument to that. First of all, Indiana, feel-good story. Everybody loves them. That Penn State game that they won, Penn State doubled Indiana's total offense. Penn State gives away a touchdown off of a turnover. And even after all that, Indiana needed essentially a ref's bailout to win that game in overtime, okay? So if they don't win that game, it's completely different. And then last week against Rutgers, they used 2 turnovers late to seal that game. And I just sit there and I look and I just say, like, I don't think Indiana's that good. I think they're a good story. I don't think they're that good. And I would say the numbers largely back me up on that. Here's a crazy stat for you. You wouldn't think it. Indiana is ranked 13th out of 14 teams in the Big Ten in total offense. In other words, they're not moving the ball. The only team that's worse than them is Rutgers. So you talk about Iowa, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue. I mean, all these teams are moving the ball more than Indiana, and I just don't think they're very good. I get why people are frustrated with Harbaugh. I get why, whether it's a Michigan fan, a non-Michigan fan, people want him out. I'm just telling you, he has a significant talent advantage here, and I think everybody in the betting market is completely overvaluing last week's loss, which, by the way, came by, one possession. It was close late. They had a chance to win. I know you can't lose to Michigan State. I get that. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying they lost by a field goal. People were acting like they lost by 40. So I like Michigan minus 3 against Indiana. Speaking of Michigan State, they play Iowa at Iowa, and I like the under in that game of 46, okay? I know. Sexy bets to start the day. We got USC with no fans in the stands. We got Iowa versus Michigan State. But I just think when I look at this game, the spread's 40, or the over-under's 46, and I look at Michigan State, right? I just mentioned it. Michigan State played the best that they possibly could last week and barely held on to beat Michigan. They put up 27 points, essentially playing the best they could, getting every call they could, and they still only put up 27 points. And so I think to ask them to go on the road a second straight week, coming off a win over a rival, I think it's close. I think it's low scoring. I think it's the typical Big Ten noon window game, baby. That's right. Spent so much time talking about Pac-12 After Dark, Maction, not enough time talking about boring old Big Ten football at noon Eastern. This is it. I like the under. All right, 3:30 games. I mentioned it. I do like the under in the Florida-Georgia game. Not going to spend too much time on this. I spent a bunch of time talking about it a minute ago. But when I look at this game, what I see is a Florida team, or Georgia team, that knows their only chance to win this game is to run the ball as much as they possibly can, take as much time off the clock as they possibly can, and try to keep this as low scoring as they possibly can. They try to get in a shootout like they did with Alabama a few weeks ago. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to work. And so I think Georgia tries to keep it low scoring. I think their defense plays well. They have Dan Mullen mostly figured out. And I like the under of 52.5 in this game. 3:30 window also. Okay. Another bet that I love. Kansas is at Oklahoma. Okay. Don't know how much you know about Kansas football. They're not very good. They are currently actually 0-6 against the spread this season. So if you haven't won a bunch of money betting on them, shame on you. But I actually like them in the first half of this game. So the first half spread's about 20.5. And I like Oklahoma. Did I say I like Kansas? I like Oklahoma. Because Oklahoma now has turned the corner. They look great against Texas Tech. And I think they know they're playing themselves back into the Big 12 championship picture after Oklahoma State lost and Kansas State lost. Oklahoma returning home also for their first home game since September. I think we get great Oklahoma in the first half. I think they dominate. I think they're up like 28-0 at halftime. And I like Oklahoma to cover the first half spread of 20.5. So I'm just betting the first half in this one. I'll wrap up because I'm going long. I told you I like Clemson. I don't trust Notre Dame. One-dimensional offense. Haven't played anybody good. I do like Clemson to cover the 6.5. And I also like the under of 51.5 in this game. And then finally, lastly, to finish everything, late night Pac-12 after dark. Did not mention this team in my Pac-12 review, but Cal, fourth-year head coach named Justin Wilcox, every single year that he has been there, their win total has improved. Went from 5 wins to 7 wins to 8 wins last year. Obviously, he's not going to top it this year unless they go undefeated. They'd have to go 9-0. But they're at home. First-year head coach on the other sideline playing Washington. And Cal, how about this? They won their bowl game last year. Cal returns every single starter on offense from this bowl game. This opened as Washington over a field goal favorite. It has now flipped the other way. Cal is a 1.5-point favorite, and I think they win, and I think you need to get this number now, because if you don't, it's only going to go up come kickoff. I should mention, by the way, if you're going to be gambling, MyBookie, promo code Torres, they'll double your deposit if it's your first deposit. Go to mybookie.ag, promo code Torres. You want to bet $50, they'll give you $100 to play with. Use the promo code Torres at checkout. And I should also say all these write-ups at AaronTorresOnline.com. But very quickly, here are the picks again. USC minus 10.5. Michigan minus 3 against Indiana. The Michigan State-Iowa under. Kansas at Oklahoma. I like the first half for Oklahoma. Clemson, I like them minus 6 and the under. And finally, Cal minus 1.5. And those picks are also up on Instagram, so make sure to find them.